Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I'm your host, Moose, and this is my producer, Nick. Our main discussion is about Islam in the 21st century. However, we will critique other religions and ideologies. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. We do, however, embrace many perspectives and free speech if it is factual and correct, and not based on any hate. Throughout the show, we will be exploring different religious beliefs, practices, and their impact on society, ranging from politics, interpersonal relationships, and mental health of believers and non believers. We hope to create an open dialogue for those who feel they're not heard, especially those who have doubts and have left their belief systems. If you are interested in exploring the complex topic of religion and wish to be part of an honest and open dialogue, this is the show for you. We also welcome feedback and discussion from our audience and listeners. The Gin and Tonic Show is a free speech platform where you can express your ideas without any fear of violence and repercussions or any consequences. Please do join our discussion in the live chat as well as the comments. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. We are pre-recording. Today we have on our regular host, Moose, myself,
Hello.
Nick, and a special guest, Agnes, from Discord.
Hola, muchachos.
Yeah.
Hola,
hello.
hola.
And now, apparently, Nick is dressed up as this weirdo Hindu guy. That's his pen name. And
So the history behind that, L is Lucius, one of the Roman empires of the Golden Era Roman Empire. C stands for Cyrus.
LC, and then you have a Chola Varman.
Who's the empire of the
Cholas.
the Cambodian princes who descended from the Rajadhatna Chola. Now, Varman means shield in Sanskrit. So the Khmers and everyone always had the surname Varman. So Jaya Varman, Yasho Varman and such. So what they had shields of joy, and then this guy was. So I'm supposed to be the Varman of the Chola Empire, which is the biggest dynasty in South India. That lasted 2.1 thousand years.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's brilliant. So today's topic, I think we're gonna review a specific challenge that is often thrown at us. And it's thrown at non-Muslims and has been thrown even in the 7th century. Bring a surah like it. Bring a Quranic surah like it. Have you guys heard of this challenge before?
Yes, we have, I think.
I think it's stated in the Quran, and I think it's stated in chapter, let me just double check. Bring a surah like it chapter. So it's 1038.
In the let me share the screen as well so the audience can see what we're seeing on here. This was written by one of our mods, Ryan.
Yes. Has the Bring a Surah Like It challenge already been met by Muhammad himself or Umar? And also, what's funny about this challenge is, this challenge has been answered before. There was a Surah Corona someone posted. Surah Corona, the person who wrote Surah Corona literally got arrested for blasphemy. So there's that. And even if someone produces something, it's literally a no-win situation, because the very next, it's like, what do they mean when you say bring a surah like it? What do you mean by that? Do you want me to write the exact same thing? Do you want me to write an Arabic poem? Or do you want me, there's no criteria that they make. There's nothing. There's no criteria even set by the Quran at all. So it's in chapter 10, verse 38. Let me just open. I want to read it out first. I want to just read it out. So it's a weird, double-edged. It also sets you up for failure too, because, and it's like, or do they say he has invented it, and say then bring a surah like it and call whoever you can besides Allah if you are truthful. So it's telling you, call someone another god. And then it follows it saying, nay, they denied it, and not they could encompass it, its knowledge, and not has come them to its, thus denied those before them. And then see how was the end of the wrongdoer. So it even finishes with a threat. So it's like, look at how the, wrongdoers, how they met their end. So this is a book, an analysis by Ryan.
Yeah.
And here's the introduction. So I'll see here. So wait, go up. So we're gonna talk about the introduction, the hadith about the Sunnah confusion, Ijaz al-Quran and the explanation of it. Putting it all together, what about Omar? Time of Shaitan fooled everyone, relevant fatwa, and also Muhammad's speech pattern analysis. So it's very short, so we'll go over this. This is the topic I wanted to focus on because it's constantly thrown at us. Even in debates, it's like bring a surah like it. Like, Nick, if you ever get into a debate, this is going to be thrown at you. So here, let's read Rayan's experience. So I was engaging with a Quranist, an Azerbaijani for what it's worth.
One question about Azerbaijan. It's a dictatorship there, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not completely sure.
I'm sure I heard somewhere they have a dictatorship.
On a system of government. So I know they have a semi-presidential, republic, but the mode of government, it's a medieval walled city. I'm trying to see, is Azerbaijan system a dictatorship?
And it's 96% Islam there.
Yeah, Muslims. It's it's a semi-presidential republic. Has the head of the state. The prime minister is the head of the government. Executive powers exercised by the president. So it's kind of like a weird, confusing system. Azerbaijan turning into a dictatorship. There's probably a lot of articles.
The new Azerbaijan party, in power since 1993, has been accused of authoritarian leadership under the leadership of both Haidar Aliyev and his son Ilham Aliyev, and the deteriorating country's human rights records.
Yes,
particularly freedom of press.
They have a conflict with Armenia that's ongoing. They have a sort of like a they even though they're Shia majority, Azerbaijan is Shia majority, they're still sort of enemies with Iran in a way, because they arrested a few individuals accused of working for the Iranian intelligence or Iranian spy network. So 32, I think, citizens have been arrested as of late, being accused of being part of Iran's spy network. So this is something that it doesn't come on the news, but it's something that's worth paying attention to. So back to this, who was saying he rejects the hadith based on the fact that the hadiths have been banned in the past, and Muhammad himself was concerned the Sahaba were confusing Sunnah for Quran. Sunnah means the actions of Muhammad, right? Or the actions, or the sayings of Muhammad. In addition to that, this person mentioned writing down hadith was also seen as a specific offense at certain points in history. I thought that was rather curious, and it got me thinking, why were people mistaking Sunnah for Quran? So
what would you say would be, like, just from the front, what, I know this is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but what would you say your view on that question is? Just,
well, keep in mind that with the hadith or the Sunnah, it kind of complements the Quran. It's not there to necessarily replace the Quran per se, right?
Yeah.
So it's the secondary source of law. It's the secondary source of law that we have to establish in in Islam. That is, so
Yeah.
there's the hadith has to be sahih too, so it has to have a proper chain of narrations. So, however, weak hadiths can still be used. It can still be used in terms of implementing certain laws. So, with hadith, it's anything is up for grabs, pretty much. So,
Yeah.
I think you wanted to show me a Sunnah.com from Sahih Muslim.
Yeah,
Please,
so this
004.
section, this section is hadith about sunnah confusion. So source example hadith. There could be
Yes.
other similar ones. So
Yeah,
this
let's
this one here
read this
is The next ones are on the page, but this one is not there. So I'll go to this
so-
link.
yes, let's go to this link. So this is Sahih Muslim 3004, or another reference is book 55, hadith number 92. So here, Abu Sa'id Khudri reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Do not take down anything from me," and he took down anything from me except the Quran. He should efface that and narrate from me, for there is no harm in it. And he who attributed any falsehood to me and Hammam said, I think he also said deliberately, he should in fact find his abode in the hellfire. So anyone who's writing anything down, aside from the Quran, and also anything falsely attributed to Muhammad, is doomed to hellfire. That's what the hadith is saying.
But
So-
on that note, then why are the hadiths on why he? Wouldn't this mean we have to take the Quran very literally? Because he's saying that we'll go to hellfire if we take him as the perfect example of men.
Very good question. And keep in mind, this is from the source of the hadith itself, one of the sahih ones, Muslim. So this makes it very interesting because most of these hadiths, this is practically contradicting the entirety of hadiths. However, you cannot also, according to certain scholars, you cannot be a Quran-only Muslim, because it's from the hadiths you find out that you pray 5 times a day, you find out how many times you wash, how these rituals are taught specifically in hadiths. Certain rulings are clarified in the hadiths. So without the hadiths, the Quran is very vague. In many aspects, it's extremely vague.
So I guess the liberal Muslims are doing it right with the amount of vagueness in this Quran.
Yeah. So if anything, the what do you call it? It makes a very interesting question. Like, poses a good question for the scholar. Why are we taking down these hadiths? But let's read the next hadith.
All right. So let's head back here, and then this is the next.
And this next one from Sahih Muslim, same source, book 42, hadith number 7147. Abu Sa'id Khudri reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Do not take anything down from me, and he who took down anything from me except the Quran, he should efface and narrate from me." So it's repeated.
Yeah.
So it's coming again. For there is no harm in it. Should efface that and narrate from him, for there is no harm in it. No harm. And he who attributed any falsehood to me, and Hammam said, I think also said deliberately, should in fact find his abode. So now, this makes it very interesting because there is no harm in recording anything else. But if you attribute any falsehood, anything that's false, Hammam further adds, and if you do it deliberately, if you attribute any falsehood deliberately, then you are facing hellfire. So it has to be deliberate, and it has to be false. Now, it puts us in a weird conundrum. How do we determine if it's false? How? So, and also, was this done deliberately? This is also going to be very, very difficult to determine. So the following hadith kind of clarifies the situation. So then Ryan adds, discovered the Truth website comments on the hadith in the following way. So this is a comment on the hadith. It is generally known that the Prophet discouraged documentation of his own sayings and the Sunnah at the early stages of his mission in order to preserve the purity of the Quran, prevent any possibility of confusion between the Quran and the Sunnah. So according to Muhammad Hashim Kamali in a textbook about hadith studies, page 22. So this, basically this is your source. He also puts the URL there.
Would you like me to go to it, or
if you wish to? Okay, so refutation. So it says here, do not write anything except anyone who wrote the Quran. Again, in the book, the article is in response to hadith reject. Okay, so go up. So this is in by Khalif al-Karim. He says this is a response to hadith rejectors' claims that Muhammad made and his companions forbade the right. I will respond to all hadith as they cite evidence and refute them one by one. Note, I will highlight in red the hadiths they use. So he highlights them
right here.
And do not write anything except the Quran. Anyone who wrote anything other than the Quran shall erase it. Again, in the book Taiqat al-Ilm, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, I asked the Messenger of God permission to write it, but he refused to give me permission. He wouldn't give. Now the response, the Prophet forbade the writing in the early stages, for he feared that the sayings in the Quran would be mixed together, the sayings in the Quran, so he wanted to keep them separate. Later, when the Quran was nearly completed, he allowed for the hadiths to be written. The full hadith, what Sayyid Khudri narrated as well. So he narrates the full hadith, so go down.
Yeah, so what would you say just in response to this before we go to the quote?
The thing is, where is it in the Sirah, that is? Because I wanted to see if this is historically accurate. Did this even happen, for example? That's my response to it. Because now this is kind of creating an environment of confusion, because there are hadiths that are telling you, hey, it's forbidden to write, but it doesn't necessarily say where, or it doesn't state the time. It's not specified. Here it says, again, do not take down anything from me, except and narrate from me, there is no harm. So there's no harm in narrating it. He who attributed falsehood to me, and Halamam said, if he deliberately, same hadith, abode shall be hellfire. At the same time, as you heard, he forbade writing, but after if you read, Muhammad says, and narrate from me, there is no harm in it. As you can see, a hadith from the Prophet was not a problem, but writing it down was an issue from the start. So this is interesting. Writing it down was the issue, but not necessarily narrating it.
Maybe so one example I can bring up is both the Vedas and the Druids-based priestly rituals in Scandinavia. Both of these texts were presented, or both of these scholarly articles or such on what you need to do, or the Vedas or the prayers or whatever they are, were passed down, and directly from the quotes of the Druids, they said that they hated writing because it messed with their memory.
Right.
So would this be a cause for the statement here, in your opinion?
Probably. Or? I think because of the oral history of this, because there's an oral tradition.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's similar to that. However, this presents a problem. If you rely on complete oral history, things are going to get changed. Things are going to be missed. And I think this is probably why they refrain from writing things down for 100, 200 years, approximately. We don't find anything until Muwatta ibn Malik, and that's 760s, but then that's not even considered important. The more complete hadith comes in the mid-800s, 200 plus years after Muhammad has passed away. How much has changed in that time? How much, it's not exactly narrated from him. And even then, there's no way to verify who said who from. I know there's an isnad or the chain. It's how do you verify it? Because at the same time, it's more of a he said, she said kind of deal. You're still writing it down. So this presents a weird conundrum, at least in my opinion. It's a weird double-edged conundrum. So, it is generally known that the documentations and the Sunnah in the early stage of the mission, because of the confusion during the latter part, that is his time, has been documented. The Prophet responded positively to the request of some of his companions. By the time then most of the... But here's the question, here's the issue though. According to the history, that is, the Quran wasn't even in book form, completed, even when Muhammad died. So it was completed in book form in the 634, during the reign of Abu Bakr and Umar, respectively. So, and then the final version came during the period of Usman as well. So if anything, like, we still had an issue of like the Quran was written down or remembered, but then what was Sunnah and what is Quran? So it presents a weird, confusing situation, at least from the historical perspective. So here's the claim number 2 from Ibn Hanbal. Zayd bin Sabit, its closest relative, visited the Khalifa Muawiyah. Go up. Muawiyah for more than 30 years after him. He told him the story of Prophet. Muawiyah liked the story and ordered someone to report. Zayd said, the Messenger of God ordered us never to write down any of his hadiths. Now, response: Zayd bin Sabit never met Muawiyah. Reasons as follows. Prophet Muhammad died in the year 633. Zayd bin Sabit died in the year 660. Muawiyah came in power and became leader. Well, technically speaking, Muawiyah was in power even before that. He just wasn't caliph. Here's what he was incorrect. Muawiyah, even though he became caliph in 661, it was during the time of Omar. I think in the 630s or 640s, he was already governor of Syria. He did have the Syria-Palestine province.
Was he a satrap or a governor?
Yeah, so he's a governor, pretty much. He's the governor of the region. I think Amr ibn As was the sort of like the warlord satrap type of situation, but not Muawiyah. Muawiyah was the governor. As I've explained earlier, but that was later revealed, Muawiyah did have hadiths written down as the prohibition was lifted by the Prophet. So allegedly the prohibition was lifted.
And then we have the source here that he puts.
Yeah. So it's like Canterbury, like, he forbade Qil and Qal, useless talk, asking too many questions. Oh wow, he actually forbade asking too many questions. Wasting one's wealth by extravagance, to be undutiful to one another, bury daughters alive. Of course, he banned that. Prevent your favors to others, asking others for something, except when it is unavoidable. So this is from Sahih Bukhari, Hadith, Volume 9, 395. But by the way, let's get back to the book, because again, there's this in itself
is a whole
it's a whole rabbit hole. We should react to that initially, see where he goes, because that in itself is pretty damn long.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, what we'll do, Moose, is that we've only been recording for the last 20 minutes, so we'll go through Ryan's book right now, and we'll come back to those, because that was actually a really interesting, because there's 2 parts to it. So total, I think 6 claims. So we can finish it in this episode. But we'll finish the book first, and then we'll go back to this.
I wanted to finish the book first and then go to the URLs. Plus, for the Imam Nawawi says the following on why the Prophet didn't allow written record of his teachings in an early mission. So Imam Nawawi, he says the reports that condemn the writing of hadiths came from earlier years of the Prophet's career, when he was concerned about his words mistaken for the Quran. Permission to write down his teachings would come later, and the Quran had become more established in the minds of Muslims. The Prophet's role as a leader of a functioning state required written records. Abu Zakaria Muhyiddin Yahya ibn Sharf. So this is the source. Sharh al-Sahih al-Muslim, Volume 1, page 357. So this is an analysis. It's from a book. So basically, what we've established is that it was forbidden first, but then there's no problem writing it afterwards. Again, according to the Islamic narrative, so to speak. However, it brings a good question. The same hadiths that we're allegedly forbidden to write down, are the ones stating it. So it's kind of like a weird circular logic that we're going through, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's a weird circular situation, at least in my analysis. So it's so like, then where the hell do we get this info? Because with the hadith, with the seerah, with the sunnah, we get most of the information from. We get the history of it, we get the situation, we get what happened, we get the extra details. If you read just the Quran on its own, it doesn't tell you anything about Muhammad, does it? You don't know how many wives he had, how many children he had. You know nothing if you just read the Quran.
Yeah, it's no, you're missing the point there, Moose. It's as many as his right hand can possess.
Shut up. Boy, no, don't get naughty, boy. Don't get naughty. Alright. Ijaz al-Quran, an explanation of it. So this Ijaz al-Quran refers to the so-called miraculous nature of the Quran, supposed imitability. Okay, so it's not ability to be replicated, or you're unable to. Putting aside the various issues I have with such an assertion, such as the fact that the beauty is entirely subjective. Correct. It is subjective. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, after all. Let's, for the sake of argument here, grant that the challenge is reasonable. There are 3 relevant ayah of the Quran. There are few other similar ones because the Quran likes to repeat itself a lot for some reason. Yeah, it does. He does have a point. It does like to repeat itself a lot. Okay, chapter 2, verse 23. And if you are in doubt about what we have sent down, our servant, then produce a surah the like thereof, and call upon your witnesses, if you should be truthful. So that's 2:23. And 38 says, or do they say that he invented it? Say, then bring forth a surah like it, and call upon assistance, whoever you can besides Allah, if you should be truthful. Now, it's also kind of like, this is the Quranic author, or Muhammad, or whoever's writing this, pushing back on the fact that these are made-up stories, because people are saying these are made-up stories. He inventing these stories. There's even a part of the chapter of the Quran, 25:4-6, which says he's writing down these legends of old. So these are taken from existing legends. Of particular note, Quran 52:33-34 says that we need to only bring one statement like it. Or do they say he has made it up, rather they do not believe, and then produce a statement like it, if they should be truthful. So there's 3 times it's brought this challenge, 3 times, which I don't get the relevance of. Why would you need to repeat this 3 times? But I think it could be just because this was said to an audience, like a lectionary read out to an audience. That's why I think there's the repetition. And it could just be also a rhyming sequence too. It would just be a weird rhyming.
It's a poem. They wrote as a poem.
Yes. I've actually shown you the Arabic itself. Like it's pretty much, it rhymes a lot. Yeah, putting it all together, go down. So yeah, we have established that Muhammad himself was concerned that the Sahaba were confusing Sunnah for Quran. Okay, we have also established the Quran challenges its audience to bring a statement like it. I believe the cited hadiths cause a problem for Ijaz al-Quran. People were confusing the Sunnah for Quran, then it stands to reason that Muhammad's own words were often times indistinguishable from the Quran itself. Interesting. So, if people weren't able to ascertain whether what Muhammad was saying was Sunnah or Quran, then Muhammad himself must have been able to imitate the Quran. So, this is an interesting. If Muhammad was unable to imitate the Quran, then why were people confusing Sunnah for Quran? If confusion was not an issue, then Muhammad would never have said as such. Clearly, he was concerned that his own words were being mistaken for ayah of the Quran. So, if somebody claims the statements within the Quran regarding Ijaz al-Quran were intended for pagans during the time of Sahaba, you should cite Quran 1788, which says the following. The Quran 1788 says, "Say, verily, though mankind and the jinn should assemble to produce the like of this Quran, could not produce the like thereof, though they were helpers of one another. So it's claiming that it couldn't produce something like it. Now go to the next page.
Now I have a question.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita be put into this?
Yeah.
And also a question on top of that is, where would the Book of Mormon fall into this?
Well, keep in mind, the Book of Mormon, how it's structured, is very different compared to biblical books. However, within the Bible, you can argue the Psalms do come close. Psalms themselves, because they are sung, they are, or anything like, is there a section in the Gita which is more sung out or more poetic?
No, the whole Gita itself is a poem, massive poem.
Right, it's a massive poem. It would come into a similar category. So if you're bringing something like it, these are books like it, pretty much. So it does answer the challenge, but it's a constant goalpost shift too when you kind of confront believers. Oh, bring us surah like it. Oh no, not that. So they'll constantly, what you'll see is that they'll constantly shift the goalpost. So, and this in itself begins a very it's an unwinnable challenge because the challenge isn't even clear to begin with. So it's like you can imitate it. Like, what do you want me to do when you say bring a surah like it? Okay, I can write the exact same thing, or I can change one word, just rewrite the same thing. Can bring one word. What language is it supposed to be? What is it supposed to be in the same Arabic? Can it be in Persian? No criteria has been given whatsoever. What about Umar? So something about that Umar said later in the Quran, word for word, it's as if Umar was also receiving revelation. Of course, 52, 33, 34, it says only we need to bring one statement. Like, I believe Umar did just that. Was Umar divinely inspired? And Umar said...
let me pull up the...
Yes, he says, Asa Rabbi Zulqad... Okay.
Yeah, I got this.
Okay, so Umar said, I agreed with my Lord on 3 matters. I said, O Messenger of Allah, why don't we make the maqam of Ibrahim as a place of prayer? And the verse was revealed. And take you people of the maqam of Abraham, or the stone on which Ibrahim stood while he was building the Kaaba on the place. So then the second situation, and I said, O Messenger, both righteous and evildoers enter your wives, so why don't you tell them to observe the hijab? The verse of the hijab was revealed. The wives of the Messenger of Allah got together as a result of the jealousy between them. And I said to them, maybe if he divorced you all, that his Lord will give you him instead better wives than you. And it was revealed like that. So this is also reported in Al-Bukhari. This is Musnad of Ahmad 157. What do you call it? We have 3 times. So it's sort of saying Umar is practically inspiring these Quranic verses. Why? This is kind of like a man making this up, So Umar bin Khattab is so go back.
Yeah, so let me go to the second verse here.
Yeah, no, it's the verse we already read, pretty much.
Okay.
So, and he also states the hadith again. The Lord agreed with me on 3 matters. Why don't we take the maqam of Ibrahim?
Yeah, so why don't we, because we already read it, let's...
Yeah. So, go up. So the time Shaitan fooled everyone. So this, I think it's called the Satanic Verses incident. So we've sort of seen that Umar was able to come up with verses too. So
Satanic Verses as Salman Rushdie?
Not the novel, no. I'm not talking about the novel. This is another incident which was reported by Muslim historians called the Satanic Verses incident.
My bad. I'm mistaken.
Yeah. So again, the novel is different. The novel does refer to this incident. However, when he says, just look up the Satanic Verses for My Quranist friend said he would not be using this as an argument against Hadith defenders from the Ummah, because in his opinion they would simply brush off the stories about the satanic verses as unreliable. Obviously, the story of the satanic verses is found in Hadith, so it's their sources, but I will concede that this would be a weaker version if laid out above. So, when Muhammad uttered the satanic verses, the audience had no reason to believe it was not authentic Quran. Therefore, the shaitan was able to fool everyone and was able to bring a statement like the Quran, thus negating ijaz al-Quran. So, in essence, shaitan just brought a surah like it. So, it's only later when Muhammad had to issue the correction that people realized the following statement was not authentic Quran. So in between the utterance and the correction, it was believed. So he says, do you see Lat and Al-Uzza and other third Manat? Go down. I think it's the further reading. Yeah, let's go to the link, because this is important. Let's go to the link. Alleged satanic verse. So the Orientalists alleged that the Prophet was worried about the enmity of the non-believers in such a state of mind that they went to the Kaaba, recited the Surah An-Najm, which is chapter 53, which is said to reveal them. The allegation, of course, is that he uttered verses 19-20, which is, do you see Allat and Al-Uzza and the other third Manat? These are the three goddesses, basically. These are the three. Satan threw
would they be goddesses? Because I know that's paganism there.
Yeah, so these are the three goddesses of Mecca, the pagan goddesses. So these are the pagan goddesses that Muhammad was talking about. These are also said to be daughters of Allah, the pagan Allah, not the Allah of the Quran. This is the pagan Allah. He's the king
and then, like I mentioned, Allah is just the Arabic term for God.
Yeah, it's just Arabic, because there was a king of gods. They were also called, king of gods. They just said the God or the God or the Lord, for example. So Satan threw in a couplet. It says, those are the swans. It says cranes, exalted. Verily, their intercession is to be expected. So this happened. Shaitan was able to fool Muhammad into thinking this was verse of the Quran. So the Prophet, peace be with him, then completed the surah and went into the end prostration according to the last verse.
Musa, just to interrupt you there, do you know one thing I love? You never say Prophet, peace be upon him. I noticed this twice.
I never say it?
Yeah, because the first time it had peace be upon him written next to it, and then you just skipped over that part. And now here as well, the moment you're like, shit, peace be upon him. Fuck it, let's move along.
Yeah, it's so repetitive, It's so repetitive. I mean, there's like, okay, the Prophet, God, get it over with. Get it over with quick. Prophet then completed the surah and went into the prostration in accordance with the last verse. All those present there, the believers and non-believers, also did so, except an old Qurayshite leader, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, or Walid ibn al-Mughira, or Abu Umayyah, who raised a handful of dust and touched with his forehead, saying that would suffice him. Qurayshite leaders are said to have given out as reason for the prostration themselves by saying that now the Prophet had recognized the position of their goddesses as intercessors with Allah. There is in no fact no quarrel among them. So afterwards, in the evening, some versions do not. Jibreel came to the Prophet, peace and God, and asked him to recite the surah, which he did, still reciting the Satan. Jibreel protested, saying that those were not what had been revealed. At this time, the Prophet became very sad and apprehensive of Allah's wrath. Therefore, two separate passages, 1773, 75, and 2252 were revealed.
All right, there's just to put this kind of reminds me of a point where there's this guy at the this professor at the University of Tel Aviv that actually studied about like psychedelic drugs like DMT and ayahuasca and such, right? So when Moses was near the burning bush, This guy claims, so this PhD guy was saying there might have been some psychedelic drugs or psychedelic properties to that leaf that was burning, which Moses smelt, which gave him that vision. And what most prophets, and if you look at most prophets at most times, they were all hippies, right? So they were probably smoking or taking psychedelics at that time.
Yes.
To get their visions. So this further just goes through my, pushes down on my belief that Prophet Muhammad was probably taking psychedelics at one point as well for his visions, or godly visions.
Because he sees Jibreel all the time, and it's Jibreel always coming, but then there's also, Satan's also whispering, and it's like, no, it's not correct.
Yeah, because if you look at the descriptions of angels and such, like Jibreel and Gabriel and such, they always look like psychedelic ayahuasca elves.
Yes.
It's the exact same description. Geometric shapes everywhere, bright neon colors, feathers or birds, and they look like ayahuasca elves, the angels.
Yes. Yeah, they do. I think someone even did a video on biblically accurate angels as well.
Yeah.
There's seraphim, there's different kinds of creatures like sons of God, and then they kind of showed how they would appear in paintings. Very strange visions, very scary looking visions. So you couldn't even distinguish, is this a demon, is this an angel? So it's very, very scary. Very trippy.
Yeah.
Some people could even describe this as very trippy.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Prophet Muhammad was probably on such intoxicants.
Probably. So hence, distinguishing between a demon and an angel would be very difficult.
Yeah.
For a human being.
I don't mean. Yeah. Now, my view on drug use is do what you got to do. I have a very liberal viewpoint on it.
Yeah.
Especially something psychedelic like ayahuasca. If I know many cultures used it, like the shamanic tribes in South America, Soma in India, they mix it with gold and amrit and such. So it's it's been used for thousands of years. If you want to use it, it's not something I hold against him. But it's just something that I know this offends a lot of Muslims, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, I want to put it out there too.
It's a possibility we're willing to consider that he might have been affected by a certain type of drug. Maybe inside the cave, certain fumes inside the cave too, that could have affected visions.
Yeah, because you're not gonna fool me that Moses was standing in a cave with a burning bush. A plant was burning. He smelt something. That smells a whole lot like guncha or ayahuasca.
Exactly. I know, and there's also the possibility that there's also epilepsy too. Again, he does display signs of epilepsy, and he goes to these visions. So he does. There's also that theory as well. I wouldn't say theory; it's called hypothesis, epilepsy hypothesis. So that one's possible. So now, here he says, back to the topic, here he says he gets 1773 and 2252, which say that, we had never had a prophet before you, so it was reassuring the prophet that it's repealing the satanic verses.
Wait, prophet before, wasn't Jesus a prophet?
Yeah, but keep in mind, he's saying that Muhammad's the first time the prophet was tempted was tempted by the devil to change a Quranic verse. Change a verse.
No, but didn't Jesus get tempted by Satan as well, right?
There's that story too, especially I think in Matthew, was it? Mark or Matthew or something like that? He did to get tempted. I'll give you the world, something like that.
I'll give you the world, I'll give you the kingdom, I'll give you the wealth, whatever.
Yes.
Yada yada.
It does come. However, this one, it's a slightly different because Muhammad is narrating something, like a Quranic verse, and it fools Muhammad. So it's and because he created the desire for Muhammad to have his followers or his family be part of the what do you call it, his tribe to accept him, because he had that inner desire. Hence why he was willing to compromise and say, okay, I can accept these 3 goddesses as part of the religion. Then rejected it. So the Qurayshite leaders became angry, renewed their enmity and opposition with increased vehemence. Meanwhile, the news of non-believers' prostration reached Abyssinia in the form of a rumor, their compromise. Peace be upon them, and then the Muslims returned to Mecca. So the people who were in Abyssinia under Najashi or King Negus, they heard the news and they were pissed. They were like, what the hell? We went all the way here and now you're just, we were trying to stay with the message of monotheism and now you're suddenly like becoming a polytheist? What the hell's going on? So the people like Ja'far Tayyar and all those companions, I think Osman was there too, Osman bin Affan, were like, what is going on? Anyway, the reply to this guy, he says, the story is so manifestly absurd and untrue. Okay, of course he's going to reject the story, because again, of course, and ought to have been rejected outright as such and not recorded by chroniclers and traditionalists. But since some of them have recorded it, it has been often cited as ground for its genuineness rather than the obviously discredited features. First of all, Tabari reported this story. It's in Tabari, one of your biggest scholars reported this story. And I think certain scholars, I don't forget, they have reported this history. It is part of your lore. So he's like, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi correctly points out that those who have critically looked into the story have all rejected it as spurious on the grounds of its conflict, the clear testimony of the Quran and the rules governing the genuineness of traditions and the dictates of reason. The Quranic evidence against genuineness of the story is of 3 kinds. You're just using the Quran as the evidence there. There are a number of the statements of the Quran that show that neither Satan nor anyone else could interfere in the process of the coming revelation. Nor did the Prophet, peace be and blessings be upon him, ever entertain any intention of making a compromise with the unbelieving leaders, nor did he ever interpolate in the text of Revelation. Okay, he's just saying no. This guy's just bitter. Passages cited as have been revealed as a sequel to the incident and for reassuring the Prophet and peace be to prove that it contrary, showing that he had not made even the slightest move to make a compromise and with the unbelieving leaders. So he go down. The internal evidence of Surah Najm in connection with the revelation of which the story has been voiced goes against spirit and purpose. But keep in mind, most of the tafsir writers have also stated this. Or most classical writers have already said that this story is true. Like, I think it's just the modern writers have rejected the story. They're starting to reject it, and I think this is where I think David Wood has a point.
Yeah.
In the doctrine of embarrassment, so to speak, because the reason the writers reported it, even though it was embarrassing, they still reported it because it's history, and I kind of agree with David Wood on this one.
How dare
even though
you?
It's embarrassing.
How dare you? How much is Israel paying you to do that?
How much is David Wood paying me to do that? Man doesn't even talk to me. Like,
no, I mean, how much is Israel paying you to do that?
Oh man, I don't know. Where's my check? I got it to double.
Oh,
check
it's inside the books I keep sending you.
No, I couldn't find a single check from there. Those are Saudi Arabian books you're sending me. Anyway, those Muhammad Hijab books. I'm gonna beat you with those books. Anyway, passages from the Quran that directly belie the story are as follows. If he messenger were to invent saying are in our name, we should certainly have seized him by the right hand. We should have severely cut off the artery of his heart. It doesn't disprove the story at all. That's like, I could say that and say, swear on, like cross my heart and hope to die. It doesn't disprove anything. Anyway.
You take that back. That's the ultimate proof.
Say, it is not for me, for my own accord, to change the revelation. I follow not but what is revealed to me. 10:15. Then it's contradicting. The story, no falsehood can approach, in front nor, but from front nor from the rear. It is sent down by Allah, all-wise, all praiseworthy. Interesting, but wouldn't Allah send Satan to test you, though? An interesting question to ask. We indeed have sent down the recital, the Quran, and indeed are its protectors from any interference. Again, this could also just state that the Quran's preservation of the Quran. And 2532 says, in what way we have revealed it, and what way we make your heart firm thereby, and we have dictated it in stages. That doesn't say anything. If it is seen from the above, the Quran repeatedly assures that Allah has protected it against any possibility of being tampered with, directly or indirectly. That it is not for the go down. Where did it go? Not for the Prophet to change it or add anything. If he had done so, Allah's severe punishment would inevitably and irreversibly have befallen him. His clear and positive statements directly contradict the story, which says that the Prophet, blessings upon him, of his own accord, or being deceived by Satan, introduced something into the text of the revelation. Not only that, the alleged violated the fundamental teaching of the monotheism. That's the problem. It was reported by, your scholars, your own sources. So we're not making this up. And second, at least where does my train of thought go? So just because verses aren't talking about this incident at all, it's like it's not. And second of all, there have been changes. There have been changes by Usman. There have been changes by other humans. So, and there have been times where verses have been abrogated. This kind of contradicts the entire situation. What the hell was the abrogation then? And it's so weird. Like you're kind of like, I feel like this is a bad cover-up, so to speak. Story is thus quite contrary to specific, also to the Quran, and also to the tenor and purport of its entirety. As such, story is totally unworthy of any credence, simply not simply from Muslims, but also from a historian. Of course, he's gonna say that. Of course, but also a true historian's point of view. Dude, we would still report this stuff. We would still take this into account. Also, I think it was in Sira of Ibn Ishaq that there was something that was changed. Oh, heck, there's a verse of the Quran that is not said by Allah but also by Gabriel himself. So not the entire Quran is from Allah. Then again, that's an entire topic of its own. So the two passages are said to have been revealed to the sequel. Indeed, they were about to divert you from what we revealed to you in order that you will forge against us something else, and in that case, would have certainly have taken you as a friend, and we had not made you firm, we would have almost inclined towards from them from a little, and in that case would have made you taste the double punishment in death, and that you would have not found for you against us any helper. These verses were revealed 11 or 12 years after the call of the prophethood. Never did we send a messenger nor a prophet before you, but that he formed the intention. Satan threw something in his intention, but Allah cancels what Satan throws and then makes his sign prevail. Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. 2252. Go down. First passage shows that it was the unbelievers who attempted to induce the Prophet to make a compromise with them, not that he ever wanted it. The passage further states that Allah made the Prophet heart firm against such attempts of the unbelievers. Emphasis there is on the intensity of the unbelievers' attempts and Allah's special favor upon the Prophet, making him immune against such efforts. And because of such a special favor, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not incline towards the unbelievers, even a little. Finally, the above verse warns that the Prophet, peace be and blessings be upon him, will have been guilty of slight inclination towards the unbelievers, suppose he would have been doubly punished by Allah. Now, I love how he uses the word Orientalists. It is strange that Orientalists mention the above verse, revealed about 8 or 9 years after the alleged incident, as assurance from Allah, because during this period many major events had taken place, including the Hijrah. Okay, first of all, not all of chapter 22 was revealed after the Hijrah. Some of these verses were revealed before. And also, like, scholars do say that this was revealed at the time. And also, you don't even have the time. You don't even present a timeline. Where do you get this? You're just making this up.
He gets it out of his butthole.
Yeah. So, the internal evidence of Surah Al-Najm emphasizes does not speak out of his desire, but it is not but wahi or revelation communicated to him. In these verses 3 or 4, the surah declares that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, has gone astray. So now, again, go down. I think, is there more? The article, is there more? There's a lot of, is there more?
Yeah,
I wanted to get back to the book.
Yeah, let's get back to that.
Yeah, I would want to go to this later, because again, in this situation, what the point was that Shaitan was able to come up with the verse.
Alright, so this is the related fatwa. What does fatwa mean? Just for those.
It's basically a ruling, that is. A ruling given by a leader.
So the Ayatollah of Iran giving a fatwa on our boy.
Like, for example, Ayatollah Khomeini gave the fatwa of killing Salman Rushdie.
Yeah.
Even gave fatwa of like banning cigarettes. I think there was a fatwa of banning against drugs. So there's other fatwas. So yeah, and any qualified scholar can give a fatwa. I think Ibn Taymiyyah, one might have given a fatwa against the printing press too, that it was haram. Not sure how accurate it is, but I'll have to look into that. Yeah. Question taken from the webpage. Is this hadith sahih? What does it mean? Do not write anything from me. Whoever writes anything but the Quran, let him erase it. May Allah reward you. So the answer is, praise to be Allah. It was narrated from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that the Messenger of Allah, do not write anything from me. Whoever has written anything from me other than the Quran, let him erase it and narrate from me. There's nothing wrong with that. Al-Nawawi said in his commentary on Sahih Muslim, Al-Qadi said that there were many disputes among the Sahaba and Tabi'in concerning the writing down of knowledge. Many of them regarded this as being makruh, but most of them regarded it as being permissible. This dispute is no longer an issue. So what he's saying is that there was a dispute between amongst the Sahaba, or the followers, about whether we should write it down or not. He differed as to the meaning of the hadith, which says that it is forbidden. It was said that this pertained to the one who was sure of his memory, and there was the fear that he may rely upon what he had written if he wrote it down. Ahadith, which say it is permissible to write things down, is to be interpreted referring to the one whose memory is not reliable, such as the hadith. Write down for Abu Shah, or the hadith of the Sahifa of Ali, may Allah be pleased with him. Hadith of the book of Amr ibn Hazm, which contains laws on inheritance, Sunnah, Diyat, which is blood money, Hadith about writing down charity and minimum amounts at which zakah becomes obligatory, Nisab, which Abu Bakr sends Anas to Bahrain. Not Anas, Anas. Anas, Malik bin Anas. Or Anas, the father of the guy.
Sorry, I have to bring in my comedy once in a while.
Quiet, boy. May Allah please. He was sent to Bahrain to collect zakah. Hadith of Abu Huraira, which says Ibn Amr bin al-As used to write things down, but he, Abu Huraira, did not write things down. And other ahadith, it was said that this ahadith forbidding writing down ahadith was abrogated by these ahadith. This is getting fucking confusing. It's like, write it down, not write it down. Have a fucking, like, clear path. What do I write down? The prohibition was in effect when there was the fear of that words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, might be mixed with the Quran, and that danger was no longer present. Permission was given to write down ahadith. And it was said that the prohibition mentioned in the hadith, referring to the writing of ahadith in the same page as per Quran. lest they become mixed, and thus the reader would be confused when looking upon this page, and Allah knows best. Hadith of Abu Shah, which is narrated by Al-Bukhari, from Abu Huraira, who said when Allah granted his prophet victory over Mecca, he stood before the people and praised and glorified Allah. Then he said Allah protected Mecca from the elephant and has given authority to his messenger and believers over it. So fighting was forbidden for anyone before me and was made permissible for me part of a day, and it will not be permissible for anyone after me. Its game should not be chased. Its thorny bushes should not be uprooted, and picking from up its fallen things is not allowed except for one who makes public announcement for it.
Then why the bloody fuck are they still fighting?
I don't know, man. Because again, it's talking about the Masjid al-Haram, right? In Mecca. But the vicinity of Mecca, that is. That you're not fighting is not allowed. So it's sacred ground, right? So I think it's referring to the sacred ground. Though they haven't exactly followed it to the T exactly, because there have been protests, there have been someone seized the Mecca too, Mecca has been invaded, plundered, pillaged, etc. So the ancient army, the picking up fallen things. Those who were murdered has the option to either accept compensation for it or to retaliate. Al-Abbas said, accept al-Ithqir, which is a kind of fan of what we use in our graves and houses. The Messenger of Allah said, accept al-Ithqir. Abu Shah of Yemeni stood up and said, O Messenger, get it written for me. The Messenger of Allah said, write it for Abu Shah. So apparently Muhammad did allow for writing things down if someone requested it. The Hajar said, what we understood from the story of Abu Shah, that the Prophet gave permission for hadith to be written down for him. This contradicts the hadith from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, which says the Messenger of Allah said, do not write things down for me, except the Quran. Two may be reconciled by noting that the prohibition applied only to the time when the Quran was being revealed, lest it be confused with something else, that the permission was given in other times, or that the prohibition only applied writing things down other than the Quran. With the Quran on one thing and the permission was given to write them separately. That the prohibition came first and the permission abrogated that. When there is no longer any fear of confusion. This is most likely the case. So we're kind of also assuming this is the case, because there are two contradictory stories that present themselves. So we're kind of given this weird, confusing situation. It said that the prohibition applied only to those whom it feared would depend on writing and not memorized, and that permission was given for those from whom such a thing was not feared. The scholars said, a group of Sahaba and Tabi'in regarded it as makruh to write down the hadith if they regarded it as a mustahab to learn from by heart, as if they learned it. But when people were no longer able to strive so hard in memorizing, then scholars feared that the knowledge might be lost, so they compiled it in books. So I kind of feel, why not just write separate books? It kind of solves the problem, doesn't it? Let's write it in a separate book. Anyway, I'm probably thinking too much logic.
How dare you apply logic?
Muhammad's speech pattern analysis and debunking.
It's a Twitter
post.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let's read that. Let's read the status. So the speech pattern analysis.
Now you'll have to excuse me. I don't use Twitter. It's an anal port. But
I think it should be available.
Yeah. Oh, and this is Dr. Joshua Little, who is I believe the founder of Gin and Tonic.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So, thread, does the Hadith corpus reliably preserve the voice of the Prophet? Joshua Little says, there is an interesting argument that pops up every now and then, again, for the general authenticity of the Hadith, or at least those Hadiths recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari. The argument is fairly straightforward. There is a consistent style, a single voice present in the utterance of ascribed to the Prophet. This is consistent with, or can be explained by, the Hadith corpus having accurately recording the utterances of a single person. Number 3, this person has to be or is very likely the prophet, since he is the one to whom all of these utterances are ascribed. In short, common ascription of hadith to the prophet matches the common voice present in the quotations of the prophet therein. I first encountered this argument in an online lecture by Professor Jonathan A.C. Brown, who states, the fact that there is this stylistic consistency for me is one of the biggest indications the overall hadith corpus material is reliable.
Now that would be something good to react to when we get...
Yeah, Dr. Jonathan Brown, right?
Yeah.
But go down. I encountered the version of it again today, prompting the present thread.
This tweet was suspended.
This argument is based on a 2012 article by Halim Sayyid, author of Discrimination Between the Holy Quran and the Prophet's Statement. Sayyid makes a strong argument that the Quran, in terms of vocabulary, structure, and style, is very different from the Hadith. However, what I'm not seeing here is an argument that the Hadith corpus reflects a single authorship. They seem like separate conclusions to me. He's right, though. It's like Hadiths are from various sources. There's no single author. There's no single source. There's multiple sources allegedly reporting from one person. Now, in fact, this is seemingly even conceded by Sayyid at one point. We can statistically state that the two investigative books have two different authors, or at least two different styles. However, most of the time, Sayyid simply takes for granted that the hadiths of Sahih al-Bukhari are sound and accurately reflects the words of the Prophet. In other words, the conclusion of this article is being cited or is already assumed at the outset of the article. This is a good point he brings out. Conclusion is already assumed first, before even going into the analysis. Thus, to cite Sayyid's article to support the conclusion the hadiths accurately reflect the Prophet's word is simply beg the question. The argument ends up being circular. Of course, I know nothing about stylometry, so maybe I'm just not understanding his analysis. If anyone more experienced with this sort of thing can shed more light on this, please do so.
Moose, would you be knowledgeable so we can probably make this a separate episode as well? Or is it something out of the realm?
I'm not into style either. I'm not sure. I can read the Arabic style and the Arabic style of the hadiths.
Oh, this is... times like this is when we want Cultured Jenny on.
Yeah. Probably knows like how it sounds. Now, another problem occurs to me is that the hadiths are frequently not mere quotations from the Prophet, but are framed by the statements of a later narrator. In fact, majority of the given matn is often, the given MATN is often the narrator's speech, not the Prophet's, which is a good point. Very good point. Because when we read hadiths, it's like, this person, I'm reporting from this person, heard the Prophet say this. It's like, for example, the hadith may comprise of statements like the Prophet did X. So-and-so visited the Prophet, so-and-so said to the Prophet. It may include quotations from others, especially the companions. Since there are numerous narrators and sources involved in the hadith corpus, how on earth does Sayyid control for this? I don't think he does. Or if he does, he doesn't mention anywhere in this article, at least as far as I can tell. However, putting it all aside, the conclusion that the Quran and Hadith are linguistically very different has long been recognized in secular scholars. For example, Donner, Narratives, Chapter 1. Go down.
Yeah, going down.
So, however, such a scholarship has a simple explanation for this difference. The Quran reflects an earlier layer of Islamic development, whereas Hadith generally reflects a later one. In other words, Quran and Hadith reflect different millers or millah. I think they're in different time periods too. The Quran was authored in the 7th century. He's right. Hadith, the first time they're penned down is the 9th century or the 8th century, if you can argue. So a century or two after the Quran. Thus, the differences between the Quran and Hadith are perfectly compatible with the skeptical view of Hadith. But let's suppose, in addition, the Quran and Hadith being very different, there really is a consistent style with the utterances ascribed to the Prophet in Hadith. This could be explained as a product of common authorial voice, but it could equally be explained as a product of genre convention. As you go down, if there, wait, you skipped a part. You skipped a go down, go up. Yeah, there. Stop. This could be explained by somewhat authorial voice, but it could equally be explained as a product of genre convention. If there was a common expectation of what a prophet should sound like, you would get the same outcome, even if all hadiths were fabricated. That there was such a convention is acknowledged by Professor Brown in his aforementioned lecture, where he mentions that hadith fabricators would mimic the common prophetic style. Such a common expectation or genre convention could itself be rooted in genuine memories of what the prophet sounded like, just Professor Brown maintains, but could also derive from general cultural archetype, even memories of other prophets or inspired figures. In fact, there are several reasons to prefer such the genre explanation over the hypothesis the prophet's specific speech or voice has been go down. The genre has been okay. In fact, there are several reasons to prefer such a genre explanation over that the prophet's speech or voice has been reliably preserved in hadith. More generally, reasons to reject the idea that the prophet's speech was preserved therein. Firstly, there is the problem of dialect, which is posed at me at the conference by Alan Jones a few years ago. According to Jones, hadiths are not specifically expressed in Hijazi dialect. This is interesting. If this is true, it weakens the idea the hadiths recorded the speech of the prophet, a Hijazi. So they're not in the Hijazi dialect. So they're not in from the dialect that Muhammad was speaking in. However, this is not my area of expertise, and I'm not aware of the systematic studies of dialect in hadith. I assume that this person will eventually shed more light on this matter. Secondly, it seems widely accepted, including in Brown, that hadiths were largely transmitted not just orally, but paraphrasically. Al-Rawiya bil-Mana. Go down. Thus, even if the gist of the hadith was accurately maintained thereby, how could the distinctive speech pattern of the original speaker survive? The nouns, verbs, syntax are being changed to successive tradents. It seems extremely implausible, even just conceptually. And he's right, though. Like, if there are later writers would add more vocabulary. So exactly maintaining the speech is almost next to impossible. Right, just give me a second, I'm just gonna have a drink. Sorry. Thirdly, the Isnad Matan analysis seriously undermines the general accurate preservation of an original voice in hadith. Time and time again, it has shown in excruciating detail that tradents reworked, redacted what they received. So people who received the speech constantly redacted, reworked, or reworded what they said. You can literally track the rewording alteration of hadith step by step from a common link, this partial common link, to their students, and go down. And so on. I have personally done this with dozens of hadith traditions, including when God created that intellect, a hadith thread. Even that thread. For more on this, see Scholler, Biography of Muhammad, Molsky, and
yeah, I think we can stop that there. And I think that's like the end of the book as well.
I think we were in the earlier some of the links that we wanted to see.
Yeah, let me pull that up. So
yeah, I think we were. I think in part 1.
So we finished claim 2, and then we were gonna go into claim 3 here.
Yeah. So.
How, just for your just so it doesn't look like screen reading, what's your opinion so far on
it? So far, it's basically what the poster on Twitter just stated. kind of dove a bit deep, but I feel like, yeah, he's trying to say that stylistically they're very different. They're not from the same dialect. They are the hadiths themselves. They're attributed to Muhammad, but they're not. Muhammad's not directly saying something. It's someone, I heard Muhammad say this. It's not even a direct quote necessarily. And there's also the issue of what do you call it? I think the time periods. The time periods are a huge issue. The hadith transmitting, and I think there's this is where you can kind of make the distinction that and I would also add to these, a lot of hadiths do contradict each other too. A lot of them do. And how do you determine which one is sahih, which one is zaif, which one is weak, which one is strong? It's also debatable among scholars. So even within the sahih itself, issue arises which one is strong or which one is weak, because there's subcategories among sahih as well too, which I think Stops and Thunderous and Rob speakers, they covered that before in hadith studies. So this in itself opens a big rabbit hole of its own. So overall, with my analysis, I think what we're also getting at is that the style is very different from the Quran. So I think, but back to the actual topic at hand. You call it. It kind of presents a very confusing situation, because the hadith, we're using this as secondary source of knowledge or secondary source of law for such a long time, established nonetheless. So this presents a very inconsistent picture. Paints a very inconsistent picture. So it does create a problem for the religion itself. It does create a huge plethora of issues. And this is just by simple analysis, simply just by looking at it from an outside view, kind of creates a huge list of confusions. Now, claim 3. I think we're back to the claim. This was about how hadith should not be rejected. Farewell of the Prophet is a cornerstone of Muslims. The final sermon given during the pilgrimage was witnessed by thousands. However, there are 3 versions of the sermon, hadith books. First version, I left for you what to hold up. You will never be misguided. The book of God and my family. Second version, I left for what you hold up to. You will never be misguided. The book and my sunnah. Third version, I left for what if you hold up to, you will never be misguided. The book of God. Now, response dealing with each claim A, B, and C. So now there's 3 different versions of the final speech that Muhammad gives. First version, I left up to you uphold to, you will never be misguided, the book and my family. So Al-Tirmidhi, who narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah, saw Allah's Messenger when performing the Hajj seated on the she-camel of Qaswa, the day of Arafah, to give an address. And he heard him saying, O people, I have left something among you of such a nature that if you adhere to it, you will never go astray. Allah's book and my close relatives belong to my household. Now this is from Tirmidhi. This is one hadith. The second version, I left for you to hold up to. You will never be misguided. The book and my sunnah. This is from Muwatta, book 46. So this is a different hadith. Yahya related to me from Malik that he had heard that Allah's Messenger may grant him. He said, I have left 2 matters with you. As long as you hold them, you will never go the wrong. They are the book of Allah and the sunnah of his prophet. And C is self-explanatory. If I left for you to hold up, you will never be misguided. The book of God. It's just the book itself. So there's 3, and this is from the excerpt, which is Sahih Muslim, Hadith 18. I've left among the book of Allah. If you hold fast to it, you would never go astray, and you would be asked about me day of resurrection. What would you say? The audience said, You will bear witness that you conveyed the message, discharged the ministry of the prophet, and given wise counsel. Go down. He, the narrator, said, he, the holy prophet, then raised his forefinger towards the sky and pointed to people and said, go down.
Sorry, I just went to grab some water, my bad.
No worries. O Allah be witness. O Allah be witness. O Allah be witness. He said it thrice. People minding the Quran itself requires hadith as it carries for an extent laws and explanations for the Quran, from prayer to capital punishments, etc. There are three versions. This is where we require hadith exegesis, just like the Quran explains some other parts of the Quran. So what the author here is trying to say is that in all three cases, you would have first there's book and family. Family of Muhammad would know exactly what he did. In the second case, we have the Sunnah, which is what he did. And the third is just the book. Now, in the first two cases, pretty much you do need something to supplement Quran. First version, 234, when we said to the angels prostrate to it, they fell, I'll say they least, demurred in pride, so became a disbelief. So he tells the story of Adam. Satan disobeys and eat ye freely thereof, but not nigh thee become wrongdoers. Now in 7:11, no, not that 7:11. We created you, then fashioned you, then told the angels, fall ye prostrate. They fell prostrate, says Iblis. It's not those who make the prostration. They said, who hindered thee? Oh, does not fall prostrate when I bade thee. I said, I am better than him, thou createst me a fire. So this one, the second version, kind of goes in more detail. And a third version, within the Quran, so he's also stating it's an example within the Quran. There are three different versions. 2060-116, when we said to the prostrate towards Adam, they prostrated themselves, but not Iblis. He refused. O Adam, this is an enemy to thee and thy wife. Do not let him to you out of the garden, so that art landed in misery. So common sense works very well here. To simply explain, Satan was haughty, thinking he was better, as he refused. But the point here is to note that the way the verses were revealed, each has its own sequence, hence we required the Quran exegesis.
Yeah, and Moose, to stop you, we got, I believe, 6 claims on this page, and we're gonna finish the third one. So how about this? We've been filming for an hour 20 minutes. We'll finish this page, and then in a future episode, we'll do the second part of this.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what would you say? What would you say to that? It's your choice. If you had the energy to do another 6 claims or whatever, would be on part 2, then we can go. But we're only in the third part.
An hour. So we can analyze the second link from there. We can do that in the next episode.
Yeah.
Because I know we're pre-recording and I know it's a bit late. Let's do let's just do one more claim.
All right.
Let's just do claim number 4. Abu Bakr at one point was not sure whether to keep what he knows of hadith or not. He had collected 500 hadiths during a very long companionship of the Prophet, but he could not sleep the night until he burnt them. Response: I don't know why these liars are spreading propaganda and manipulating the hadiths, making it out like leaders dislike writing. Let's see why Abu Bakr burnt his hadith collection. Aisha Raziyatullah says, my father Abu Bakr had collected 500 hadiths. One night I noticed he was very restless. He was tossing about in the bed and could go to sleep. I got worried about this and inquired, are you suffering from any trouble or worried about anything? He did not speak and remained restless throughout the night. Next morning he called me and said, bring the collection of these I gave you to keep. Brought the book and he set fire to it till it was burned. He said, the collection contained many hadiths I had heard from other people. I thought if I died I left behind a hadith accepted as authentic by me, but really not so. Then I should have to answer to that. It was Abu Bakr's zeal for knowledge that caused him to compile a book of 500, but it was due to his extreme cautiousness that he burnt the collection. Another thing to note is that Abu Bakr wrote down hadith. It was forbidden by at the time. Would he really go against the Prophet's commands to write it? The answer will not be clear that the writing of these was not. So what he's saying here in claim number 4, I think he's also establishing that hadith writing itself was not necessarily forbidden after. I think there was a time where it was forbidden, but not after. Because again, Muhammad had already died. He's already dead. So they needed something. And I think, but at the same time, those who say that writing down is forbidden also have a point. Why would he then burn these hadiths too? What if he's scared? What if he's worried? What if I did something wrong, you know?
Yeah.
So even Abu Bakr himself is confused at this point. Just like you and me. Both confused at this point.
Alright, we got two more claims, right? So let's finish them and
let's finish these claims.
Yeah.
And we'll do part 2 next time then.
Yeah.
So, claim number 5. I wanted to write Sunan, but I remembered the people who were before you that they write other books to follow and abandon the book of God. I will never swear replace God's book by it. This is from Jami al-Bayan. Response: Umar wrote a book on law, Shri. He said, so this is about Umar bin Khattab. Is there anything in Allah's book? Act according to it and do not let me deviate from it. If there's anything not mentioned, look into the Sunnah of the Messenger and judge in accordingly. So according to Muhammad al-Razaz, Al-Faruq al-Umar bin Khattab, so it's a biography of Umar al-Khattab. Now, did Umar forbid writing? As Umar way, we learn that the authority of Ma'mar ibn Rashid during his caliphate, Umar once consulted the companions of the Prophet on the subject of codifying hadiths. Each person affirmed that such a codification should be done. Umar continued to hesitate and prayed to God for a whole month for guidance and enlightenment. Ultimately, he decided not to undertake the task and said, former peoples neglected divine books and concentrated only on the conduct. I do not want to set up the possibility of confusion between the Quran and the Prophet's hadith. The only reason, so here what we have is that Umar is also confused. He's the second caliph. He wants to write down something. He's sort of also worried that people end up confusing the two. And also, he's not even sure, should I even record what he has said? Again, sometimes the Quran in itself, Umar, I think, probably realized it's not enough at this point. It was not enough to implement all the laws because there's so many things, so many nuances that the Quran cannot address. And it's limited in its scope. It's extremely limited. I know it's going to sound offensive to many believers. I know it's a holy book, but sorry, it is very limited in its scope. And it repeats itself a lot. So that's why they were kind of confused. And also, they're also already confused from earlier sayings that do not write anything else down. So, the only reason he didn't want to write compile a book of hadiths is because he didn't want people to concentrate on the hadiths of the prophets more, forget about the book of Allah, which is the Quran. But he never forbade people from writing them. He himself didn't prefer it. There is not one authentic hadith handbook where he forbade people from writing them down. So yeah, Umar didn't forbid anybody from writing anything down. He did hesitate.
Yeah.
He did. So Umar and Khattab wrote hadiths to the following people: Utbah bin Furqad, Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah, presented Abdullah ibn Umar hadith with sadaqah. More evidence that, so there's evidence that Umar still encouraged hadith, the sunnah of the Prophet, delivered a sermon after Muhammad's death and said, he delivered a Friday sermon. And he mentioned that the Apostle of Allah and Abu Bakr saw a dream that a cock pecked me twice. No, not that cock, Nikhil. No.
Well, I was thinking it was the black one.
No, we're talking about a rooster here, okay? I dreamed that a rooster pecked me twice, and I perceived that my death is near. Some people have suggested...
Wow, that cock must have had a lot of meat in it.
Some people have suggested to me to appoint my successor, and Allah would not destroy his religion, his caliphate, that which he sent his apostle. Death approaches me soon. Issue of caliphate would be decided by the consent of 6 men.
Well, I'd say that's false because the word consent is not present in Islam.
Oh, he's talking about succession, right?
Ah.
He's talking about the succession of leadership, not so much, consent and sex, for example. So I know fully well that some people blame me that I killed with these very hands of mine some persons who apparently profess Islam, and if they do this, blame me, they're enemies of Allah and they're non-believers. And I have not after me anything to which my mind seems more important than Allah, who never turns towards the Messenger of Allah more often than this Kalala, and he, the Prophet, was not annoyed with me on any other issue. And he struck with his finger and said, does this verse, the end of Surah An-Nisa, which was revealed in the hot season, not suffice you? If I live longer, I would decide this problem so clearly that one who reads the Quran or one who does not would be able to take correct decisions, but under this line. He, Umar, said, Allah, I call you to witness on these governors of lands. I set them to the peoples so that they should administer justice amongst them, teach them the religion, sunnah, and the sunnah of the Apostle, and distribute amongst them the spoils of war, and refer to me if they find difficult. Oh, people, do you eat these two plants from onions and garlic? I find them nothing but repugnant. But he didn't like onions and garlic. He has the same problem as I do. Probably had IBS, but I find them nothing but repugnant. For I saw what Messenger of Allah sensed the odor of these two from a person. He was made to go to al-Baqi, so he who eats should make the odor die by cooking it well. This is from Sahih Muslim, book 4, hadith 1151. So go down. So yeah,
Right.
Omar isn't forbidding the sunnah, so to speak. Also here, try to understand the cases. Therefore, there's no evidence in the Quran, then try to make an analogy between the case that are dealt with sunnah. So according to this source, this is what Umar is also saying. So he is not necessarily forbidding the sunnah, but he also says that, okay, try to reason or make an analogy. So try to make. So Rashad Khalifa, the Prophet said, do not write anything down except the Quran. This hadith states that the Prophet maintained the hadith stands till death, and the Quran is the final testament. However, response, as I've already read Sa'd al-Khudri narration, this response concerning Rashad Khalifa quoted from Musnad ibn Hanbal. I've done some research from Musnad ibn Hanbal's book, and there's no such hadith there. So this is a false. What I found is that, boy, what are you doing?
Wait, what?
There we go. I said, I quoted from Musnad, but what I found, Dujan Abdul Husn, who's from Basra, came to Medina, he met Islam. I'm so tired of reading.
Last claim.
Said, tell me a report. And Umar, I cannot, that I will add or subtract something. If he said to Umar, tell us something from the message, Umar was said, I am afraid that I may add or subtract a letter. Whosoever tells a lie will be to hell. So if anything, Umar is scared of telling a lie.
Yeah.
What if I'm making this stuff up? So he's a bit scared.
Anxiety.
Yeah. It was
Test anxiety.
I know, right? It's the same as exam anxiety, except you have hell. Rather than
so is this the spelling mistake he's talking about?
Speech. Wait. Where did I go? Oh, there. It was narrated by Abu Firas, who gave a speech. Ammo. My goodness, there's some spelling error here.
That's what Umar was scared of.
The spelling mistakes.
Yeah.
All people. We used to know.
So this guy's going to hell, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's going to hell because he used. There's a wrong spelling. Sorry, going to hell. Bye bye. It was among us, and revelation was coming down. Allah would tell us about you, but now the Prophet has passed away, and the revelation has ceased. Now the way to judge you is that whoever amongst you shows us good conduct, we will think of you. Blah blah blah. For whatever you do, there's so much repetition. There was a time when we used to think that whoever learned the Quran seeking hereby, Allah is the reward that is with him, but we will reward him. But some men learn the Quran seeking with that which is with the people. So seek Allah by learning and by your good deeds. So by Allah, do not and workers to strike.
This is a whole lot of stuff, so we'll skip all this.
Oh yeah.
Well, this next episode.
We'll look at the
because I think this is a rabbit hole in itself.
Yeah. This in itself is a rabbit hole because we looked at hadith preservation. And we looked at the challenge itself of the Quran, which is bring a surah like it.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the book, Rayan's book.
Yeah, no, we finished the book actually.
Yeah. But I wanted to just go over the highlights. So just go over some highlights that we covered. So what we covered, basically, Shaitan was able to come up with a statement, according to some sources, but I know modern Muslims reject this story. So there's that in itself. So Satan came up with a claim. Omar came up with some verses. Then I remember I told you about the story of Abdullah ibn Abisar. I'm surprised that Rayan didn't put in that story where Abisar is like added a verse and Muhammad's like, yes, this is how it was revealed to me. So Abisar was like, I just made that up. So there's 3. And I think there are examples of like Quran-like surahs that we could find.
Yeah.
And I think we should do that next episode.
Yeah.
What if we are able to find a surah like this? No, surahs like this. Like I remember I was telling you, Surah Al-Corona. So I think this is my analysis. But what do you think? What is your... I know it's a bit confusing. I apologize because we went through... There's the issue of like, should hadith be rejected? But at the same time, there's the bring a surah like it challenge. So there's 2 different topics we ended up doing. So what do you think overall?
I think possibly having a Muslim scholar on to discuss this as well would probably, because there's a lot of questions.
Lots and lots of questions.
Because like the thing with any religion, I'm not going to single out Islam here, but any religion, if you have 5 beliefs, you're going to get 6 opinions out of it. It's...
Depends on the opinions of scholars. There's also like different sects too that you deal with. We might have a Muslim guest eventually, so we might even ask him those questions too.
Yeah,
so
and he seems pretty open to discuss as well. So
yeah, okay, so we might ask him and discuss into this topic specifically. So we'll shoot him a message and see if he's interested in this topic because I find this topic rather interesting.
All right.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we are.
Oh yeah, we were still recording.
2 things that came to mind. I didn't want to butt in. You had a kind of a fast pace of talking, so it was like.
Yeah, I was reading fast. I was trying to get this.
Yeah. 2 things that came to mind. One, the True Furqan. I don't know if you've probably heard of that.
The True Quran, the Furqan, right?
No, the True Furqan. As far as I know, that seems to be some kind of an attempt to create not a surah, but kind of like an imitation in some sense of the entire Quran, but I think it has a different message. I think it's, if I recall correctly, it was like more geared towards pro-Christian or something, if I recall correctly. But I assume it has lots of surahs in it. So like if the insofar as the challenge of bring a surah like it is concerned, I assume there must be plenty of surahs to kind of choose from the Furqan. And then the other, which is more kind of mockful, is the thing that Abdullah Samir and Abdullah Gandal did a video on the what was it called? Surah Faqaf?
Surah Faqaf, which is basically
Faqaf.
Surah Faqaf.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention those 2. They kind of.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I know we should analyze them as well and see if because they do meet the challenge technically, and they're in itself more mocking it, but technically it does sound like it, you know?
Yeah.
It does sound like it. So, you could make an argument for it. Because I think, Agnisar, what we were discussing, there's no criteria set of like...
Yeah.
What is the challenge? And I think like Jay Smith said, we can use and I kind of agree with Jay Smith. He can read out the Psalms, and that would sound similar too.
Yeah.
Psalms sound very similar.
The Homer's Iliad and Odyssey would probably fit as well.
Yeah, there's
because they talk about honor, family, the gods, and everything.
Yes, and then we have the Gita as well, which has a poem structure as well.
The Ramayana and
you're reciting it.
Yeah.
I think there should be some lectionaries too. I think there might be some Jewish texts as well that could be recited. There are actually dua books that are including Sahif Sajjadiya, which was written by fourth Imam, according to Shia Muslims, was the great grandson of Muhammad. So he wrote the Sahif Sajjadiya, which is a collection of duas or supplications. This is not even part of the Quran. He was able to write this stuff down. Then there's also, I think, certain duas that were written by Allama Majlisi as well during the Safavid era. So there have been other duas that have been written down, like the Quran, because the Quran's supposed to have these magic abilities, allegedly. Yeah. So the challenge has kind of been met already.
Yeah. Oh, and just as a heads up, Great Maker 42. Yeah, we're recording as well, so you might, if you say anything, it'll go up on the channel.
Oh, okay, no problem. I just want to listen.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're open to speak and listen and ask questions as well. But yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, this was. It's such a weird challenge in itself, and it sets you up for bring a surah like it. It's never satisfied by the other person because you can't bring another surah like it unless you want me to write the exact same thing down. So
I was just going to say that must be the one thing we can write off as a possibility, because if you bring the exact copy of the thing, then it's not like it. I mean, it's just it.
Yes. Right. That could be a good indication too. And I think I've heard stories like this was a challenge to Arabs, challenge to poets, especially, to bring a surah like it or bring a chapter like it. And I think there might be the style, the recitation style of poetry. It might have been a challenge of the time as well, in the 7th century when Islam was spreading towards the poets.
This is a book of all time, Moose. Don't insult.
I know, there's also that claim too, it's a book of all times, but then it has stuff that's still stuck in the 7th century. Yeah, I know, I'm just trying to kind of come up with some rational reason behind why this challenge even exists in the book. And I could definitely see those who, because it also brings, if someone even brings a surah like it, you could put a blasphemy charge on them. People would sharpen their sticks and knives and then just come after it, pretty much.
Maybe that was the point.
I think so. Maybe it's a trap. It's a trap. It's probably a trap. So so it's a very it's an example of what you call double bind. Double bind is damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like walking on eggshells. It's like the example of Salem witch trials, for example. If she drowned, she's not a witch. She survives, she's a witch, kill her. You're damned either way.
Yeah.
So
I think we can just make some conclusion
sort of
statements as well.
But anyway, I'd love to hear other opinions, Great Maker, Agnesar, Nick, what your analysis is so far on this.
Yeah, I think we summarized it previously as well, where there's different poems and such that show some sort of character, like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and such.
Yes.
And to an extent, because of such the vagueness of this challenge, probably the Homer's Iliad And obviously, it can fit it to a point where Shakespeare can probably fit as well.
I was going to say Omar Khayyam seems
Omar
to
Khayyam, yeah. Omar Khayyam, yeah.
Yeah.
Even
better than
Dante's.
Moran, if you ask me.
Oh, I think Al-Razi, one of the critics of the Quran from I think the 9th or 10th century, I can't remember, did state that bring a surah like it. Like when he said that in the quote, he's like, we have books far better detailed, far better than that. And he's like, it's so ridiculous. And he was a very respected doctor of his time. So he was a very open critic of the Quran. And he's, but he's stated as an Islamic, there's now the claim that he's an Islamic scholar now, or from the Islamic scientist now, or Islamic doctor. But he was not even close to Islamic to begin with.
One thing comes to my mind if I try to think of if I wanted to imitate something, a text, but I don't want to bring the very same exact thing, but I want to try to fulfill as many criteria as I can. First thing that comes to mind is maybe I have to have the same number of syllables as in the original text. So that's one. Maybe it has to have a similar message, whatever that means. Whatever would fulfill that condition. And maybe it would have to be equally, quote-unquote, poetic, whatever that means, too.
That's even subjective to equally poetic, too.
Yeah.
Super subjective, because what language is it, and how poetic should it be? Should it be in the Arabic language? That could be a criteria too, because it should be in the same language. Like, is it in the same dialect of Arabic?
Layla and Majnun might come out as a.
Layla and Majnun. That's a poem too, right? It's a pre-Islamic. It's not pre-Islamic. It's during the time of Abdul Malik. Actually, this was written during the time of Abdul Malik. That could be an interesting argument that one can make.
I think in regards to the kind of something be poetic, one thing that comes to mind is something in the text would have to evoke in the reader like something about the text being quote-unquote beautiful. But again, subjective.
Very subjective. And not only that, when you're conditioned to believe a certain text is beautiful, because you're conditioned from childhood too, that's how religious conditioning works. You're gonna be biased towards it. You're gonna see it positively, but then you'll see the other text like, oh, it's not that. It's not invoking the same feeling as it's doing. So there will be that bias because it's constantly been fed to you for so long, and you've just been reciting it as a child. So that in itself, that's why it's like the challenge is like, it's a strange challenge. I've actually presented it to certain like Muslim commentators online too. And they say, no, it has to be this. No, it has to be that. He rejected Abdullah Samir's thing because it's like, what is this? This nonsense. Because it's a mockery, right? It's mocking it. It's I think it's because you're so like in that bias that you're not willing to see the other side. Yeah, I think that's you're saying.
Mockery, we could argue, kind of goes against the similar message spirit,
Right. Right.
And it goes against the condition of being poetic, beautiful, maybe, because it's like you're instead of trying to evoke, inspire the reader, you're more like just or instead, we could say instead of pedestalizing the characters in the story, we are mocking them. So it's like, in that sense, it is a different thing we're doing.
Yeah.
Another condition I forgot, which could be hard to like fulfill all these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to have the same number of words and the same number of syllables, if and even more difficult if it's difficult if you're trying to fit the poetry condition, the similar message condition, same number of syllables, same number of words. And then there's the question of, can it be in a different language other than ancient Arabic?
Yeah. That is a condition that we have to look into as well, too. And I think we earlier quoted satanic verses, which were Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Verily, these are the high-flying cranes or high-flying swans. Their intercession is to be accepted. And this was in Arabic. So this in itself, the line I found interesting, is in the same language. It was supposed to be part of the Quran, but isn't, because allegedly Satan said it. And it was chanted by the Meccans when they used to circumambulate or circulate around the Kaaba. So would you consider that to be a sentence like it, like the verily these are the high-flying cranes or the high-flying swans, the Hanarik, so to speak, the satanic verses incident?
Me personally, or?
Yeah. If you do you think that would kind of fulfill, because it is talking about inner gods in a way, right? So it is a kind of like a religious act as well.
But it's not mockful, is it?
It's not mockful. Just no. It was a chant done by the Qurayshis during Mecca, like pre-Islamic Mecca, where they used to circle around the Kaaba and they used to chant this because Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were the three idols they worship, because they're the quote-unquote daughters of Allah, Islamic Allah, that is.
But does it contradict? These satanic verses, do they contradict anything like in the Quran?
I wouldn't say contradict, but it does contradict the overall message, which is monotheism.
Right.
The concept of monotheism.
Yeah.
That's the only thing it contradicts. But other than that, it does have that chant sort of a sound going. So, and I think Ryan in his book did bring that up. Like, Satan was able to come up with a verse like it. So, This I found is a very interesting example. Like, I didn't think of it this way before. So, I don't know. Maybe it does meet the challenge to an extent.
Yeah. I think we're at the 2-hour mark anyway, so...
Okay, yeah. But thank you so much, guys, for briefly chiming in, listening in. Thank you for joining us.
And let's take care. The recording